Hello and welcome to WorldCFMMusic. I'm excited for today's video. I have Joy with me. She is currently a pastor's wife in Waco, Texas, but I know her from when she used to be in the Albuquerque church. She played piano there for a few years and has a lot of piano experience, piano that I was able to observe just in going and visiting revivals, concerts, church services of various kinds. And I admire your piano playing, Joy, and so I'm really grateful and glad that you were willing to do this interview. And so first of all, I just want to tell you thank you for your willingness to share with us your knowledge and experience on the piano, in hopes that it'll help a lot of people that are watching this video. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, there's anything I can do to help, but there's much more qualified people than me, but I'm happy to do what I can.
Yeah, well, in hearing your piano playing, I think you do a great job. And so just to get started, why don't you go ahead and just give us your musical background or your musical testimony, if you will. Let us know a little bit about your experience.
Well, I actually always sang when I was little, and I started playing the piano and taking lessons to sight read and read music from a couple of different piano instructors. And then when I wanted to start playing for song service, I started learning how to play chords and scales and kind of transitioned into that. And I think I was 12 when I started playing in song service. And so I've kind of been playing piano since then, and, kind of singing and playing most of my life. And then I played in song service in Albuquerque for the last 28 years. And then, like you said, we're pioneering now in Waco, and I play the piano here as well.
Nice. Very cool. So with that, going back to the beginning, how exactly did you go about learning piano?
Well, like I said, I started learning to sight read and stuff, and reading the notes, and which is awesome. I mean, it's amazing for people to be able to do that. But I was actually more interested in playing church songs and worship songs, which very few of them at the time had any, scale or had any music that was just sheet music or whatever. It was mostly chords. And so I started learning to play chords. And in doing that, I was learning the scales, kind of on your videos, how you tell people learn the piano scales, because that was huge. Learning the scales. And then the instructor that I had, he was teaching me to really train my ear to hear music. And he would say, for instance, give me a C chord or the C scale. And then he'd say, now there's your bass line, go home and learn the rest of them. So I'd go home and I'd have to pick it out and it was really training my ear, trying to pick out the different scales. And then just, transferring from sheet music to chords. And that's pretty much how it all started.
So you had someone teaching you, but it was also kind of empowering in the sense that they made you go and learn more on your own.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is with sheet music, some people, I've ran into people that say, well, I can't play chords. I only sight read. And to me, if you can sight read, then you can play chords, because your hands are familiar with playing. All you have to do is, the notes, timing, tempo, everything. Just get a chord chart and say, oh, okay, this is a chord, you know what I mean? And I think, how you said freeing, it's absolutely more freeing to play chords as opposed to sight reading, because basically play something in this note, play something in this key. And you can add the melody, you can, put little riffs in, you can do fills. And as long as you're in the right key, you're really playing your own thing. So as opposed to sheet music where you are following every note, every measure, and so I think for my friends that have tried to go from sight reading to chords, at first they get a little intimidated, like, well, what do I play? But if you can play and read, sheet music, or even just plunk out a few notes on the piano, you can pick up playing chords super easy.
So then when you first started learning, granted you had learned, to sight read first, but it's still piano. Mm-hmm. What were some of the challenges that you faced when you were first learning, or even when you were transitioning from sight reading to just, song service sheet music, if you will?
Yeah. I think part of it is, like I said, there are not specific notes to play. It's just you have a C chord and a D chord. And unless you're playing the organ, just kind of sitting there holding the note, you really don't. What else do you play? So that was the biggest thing, I think. Say, okay, I played the C chord, but it needs some help, So I think being used to having every note given to you, like I said, as opposed to just this chord. So that was challenging. But then on the other hand, the more you practice and the more you play with it, you realize, wow, I can play anything in this scale and it'll go with this. And so it gives you freedom to actually be creative and have fun playing the song and learning, different notes that sound good together, or different chords, and so even though it's challenging on one hand, it was a kind of an exciting challenge, because you realized how much you really did know if you just practiced and worked on it.
Nice. So then with the focus, if you will, of this channel, the idea is to give people a basic resource to get started on a variety of instruments and just giving general tips and advice. So zeroing in on the new piano player, what would you suggest that a new piano player would focus on if they're barely getting started on the piano?
Well, first I would say to actually watch your videos, because I've looked at your piano videos and they're very helpful, especially to people who have never played any type of music. It was really helpful. Yeah. So good job on that. Cause it really does give a lot of good information, and I think, getting a chord chart, you can buy them at your local music store, Amazon. For my girls, I took a picture of one and just printed it off, and it was just the basic scales, I think it was some majors and minors. And you could really start anywhere, just learning your scales, how you have it on your channel, learning your scales, and then looking at a chord chart and saying, okay, get a simple song. I know, for instance, on several you were doing Create in Me, I think. And I think all of us, my girls started on Create in Me and More Love. You got your 3 chords, people, but it's cool because if you just play those 3 or 4 chords, you realize, wow, I can play a church song. That's all it takes. So to me, I would say, get a chord chart, learn your scales, whether it's how you were, teaching it by the half steps and whole steps here, whatever, just learning your scales, learning your chords by a chord chart very simply, and practice and pray, because if you're doing this for God, and you're doing it for a song service to worship God, He'll help you. You're not trying to become a rock star, or a concert pianist. You're trying to glorify God and use this in worship. And that's been the biggest thing for me, is God, you've got to help me do this, and I think practice and prayer, you can do anything.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. And so you have the foundation. There are a number of people that I believe are watching this channel that have some piano experience or varying levels of piano experience. I know I can speak for myself. I believe I can speak for a lot of people, though, in that when you play an instrument, you intend for it to sound good. I don't think it's anyone's desire just to go up there and just say whatever comes out. Like, I want this to sound good. And so one of the challenges is, finding the balance. Like you said, we're not trying to be rock stars. We're trying to glorify God in song service. But you want your piano playing to improve. You want your skill set to improve. And so for those who have more experience, but they feel like they've, plateaued, if you will, what advice would you have for them to kind of break through that barrier, to not become discouraged?
Right. Well, I think, like you said, anybody that plays any instrument or anything, you get to that point where like, you need something else to throw in there or something. It just seems the same. And I know I've been there. One thing I do, first of all, you can't just show up to church and play for song service and that be the only time you touch your piano or whatever instrument you're playing. That's just wrong. You just don't do that, excuse me. So I would say, and if you don't have a piano at home, then, ask the pastor, whatever, meet at the church, something so that you can practice, because in practicing even the same church songs, if you play them over and over, your fingers, at least it's always been this way for me, your fingers just start doing things, you're playing the scale in there because it's almost like your fingers are bored. You're bored. So you're finding different things to do. And I know I tell people, look, most of the things that I play or the riffs I play, it's because I was practicing and I messed up, but it sounded cool. So I'll go back and say, now, what was that I was playing? Excuse me. So I would say definitely, if you're in a rut, don't think, well, practice, because when you practice, it really does something to you and it improves. Or get a song, a different song, not a church song, get a song off the radio, that you like to listen to, try to pick out the chords or print them off and play something kind of out of your box and say, okay, wow, this is something interesting, or a different key that you're not used to, because it just inspires you and it helps you kind of think something different, than you're used to playing. So my thing there is, don't just play song service, don't just show up and say that this is my practice time, but to take time to practice at home or practice outside of song service, play something different, play the same song over and over, ask other people that play an instrument or play the piano, sometimes that's what I would do, is I'll hear somebody playing and say, wow, can I watch you? Or what were you playing there? And you get different ideas from people like that as well.
That's awesome. And that was actually another question of mine too, is, what types of resources would you encourage people to look into? Because there are a lot. I mean, you can almost get a degree on YouTube nowadays.
Yeah, well, you can, definitely. There's things like that. You can pull up songs on YouTube. I know one thing I've done is I've gone to music stores, whether it's just a music store or a piano store. It's surprising how many church people work in a piano store or music store that play the piano, and I've gone in several times and tell them, hey, look, I play the piano for my church. I don't play sheet music. I just play by chords. But I feel like I'm in a rut. What do you play? How do you do this? What would you recommend? And it's kind of cool, especially for musicians, because most musicians are so full of themselves. They don't want to ask for help. So when they do want to ask for help, I think people freak out, and so they've always been more than happy to give me their 2 cents, like, hey, let me show you what I do, which is cool. Hey, so I've asked random people like that. I've asked other piano instructors that weren't even teaching me, but, just, off the cuff, hey, what do you usually play in your bass hand, your left hand when you're playing chords, and when I was younger, one of the instructors told me, well, instead of just the octave, I throw the 5 in there, of the scale. And so for a while, that's what it changed it up for me. Just little things like that, just add a little something different. But I think anybody that plays and you ask them and you're genuine and trying to find a way to improve yourself, most people are willing to at least give you something that they do or a little tidbit,
Yeah. And I agree. I know, personally speaking, when people ask me questions, how do you do this or how do you do that? In my mind, I'm like, it's really not that crazy. It's just the little trick that I have, and I'm more than happy to share that with anyone that wants to know, and so I think that's very important to relay is we have nerves, we have insecurities, we have fears, you know what I mean? But the reality is when you have the mindset of I want to do something for God, and I need to reach out and get some help. There's help out there for you. That's why this channel was created too, is to try to help people with that. But yeah, that's awesome to shed light on that. Yeah, I never thought of that too, is church musicians at a piano store.
They're everywhere, trust me.
Yeah, that's funny. So now that we've covered, in pretty good detail, the individual aspect of piano playing, when you play piano for song service, most of the time you're part of a team, right? Unless you're barely starting out and all your church has got is one piano player and that's it, then that's what you got. But I think it's important to go over what it's like to play on a song service team and the balance of the piano player's role within the song service team. So can you just expound on that a little bit and playing in a team atmosphere, I guess?
Yeah. So I played on, several teams, I guess, through the years. And I think one thing is, first of all, knowing that it is a team. You're not up there trying to showboat and do your own thing, that you have to work together. But then also having a right attitude. People all the time in Albuquerque would comment, man, the song service is amazing. But what they thought it was just, because you have a bunch of people who know how to play and sing, but really we practiced a lot. We would practice, but then we learned how to play with each other, and it was a priority for us that you had to be in prayer. Obviously work happens, things happen. I mean, obviously, but the standard was you're in prayer before you play for song service, and with a good attitude, because when we would get players up there that were really just all about them and wanted the world to know how awesome they were on whatever instrument, that doesn't mix well. We're trying to glorify God, and God inhabits the praises of his people. And then we got a funky attitude here, Right. So I think learning to deal with attitudes and making sure everybody's on the same page, that is what our mission and our goal is on the team, is to give God glory, not to give yourself any praise, but praying and having good attitudes and just having a right heart and a right spirit and working together, whomever's in charge, whether it's a song service leader or some people have had someone outside of the team, kind of directing the whole thing and working as a team. And if you have a great idea, I mean, that's awesome, put it out there, but don't get offended by other people. If you're a musician, you know how musicians are, and you need to work together, and don't let people offend you. Just know, because the devil, to me, in the years that I've played, if the devil can screw up the song service, he can screw up the service, but if your heart is right and everybody's worshiping God, God's spirit comes down and it breaks through that, so I think keeping that in mind while you play and while you're working together, that really, if you work together, that God likes unity, and work together, and God anoints it. And that's when God comes down,
Wow, that's really good. You reminded me of something that Brian, the Prescott song leader, said in the last interview. And he said one of the greatest compliments he received was from an evangelist that told him, "What I admire about you is that I don't know you're there."
Yes.
And it's crazy because he's the song leader. He's at the forefront. Everyone sees him. He's right smack in the middle.
Right.
And for him to say, the greatest compliment I could give you is that I don't know you're there. And it's just a testament to the mentality that we ought to have as a song service team, whether you're singing, whether you're playing an instrument, is to play your role, but with the mindset of, am I glorifying God? Or, ooh, that little lick that I played was really nice. It's fun. Let's be real. Musicians like to have fun. But at the same time, I think it's important to have that balance of saying, now is not the time for that,
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Your answers have been amazing. So thank you for that information. That's been very encouraging. There are people out there watching this channel, watching this video, that are saying, I want to play piano, but I don't think I have what it takes.
Uh-huh.
And we know they do.
Yeah.
We know they could do it, but what encouraging advice would you give to someone who's on the fence, if you will, in regards to, God's challenging them, or they see a need in their church, or they just want to rise up and do something for God, and this is something that's been on their mind? How would you encourage someone in that position?
Well, I think first of all, I would say that if God's dealing with you, don't run from God. That'll make it worse, that, yeah, we need people to, as far as being in a church, in a song service, being a pastor's kid, then being a pastor's wife. Anybody that wants to help is a major blessing,
Yeah.
So anybody that wants to jump in, whether you're a pro or not, is irrelevant. Just the fact that you have a heart to serve, God can use that, and I think, like we mentioned in the beginning, if you have a right attitude and you're doing it for the right reason, and you ask God to help you, he's going to help you. And practicing, like one of my daughters, they're both learning how to play the piano. And one of them, I said, I haven't heard you playing for a while. And I said, why not? And she said, well, because when I play the song, it doesn't sound like you. And I laughed. I said, yeah, but I've been playing for like half my life. And I said, you've only been playing for a few years. I said, you have to practice to get to the point, where it sounds better. It doesn't just happen. And so I think it's just like anything else, to have a right heart. Say, this is what I want to do. I want to play the piano for song service. I'm going to do what it takes, starting with the scales, learning the chords, having a right heart, but really praying and practicing and just keeping your heart right with God. It'll blow your mind what God can do, because he really does just help you. He gives you the ability. There's plenty of times where I've played songs or I've had to do something and I think, oh my God, Jesus, I need your help on this, Yeah. And because I wasn't trying to say, whoa, look what I can do, God came down and he helped me, and to God be the glory, and when you have that attitude, God can really help you. And it's not as intimidating as you think it is once you get started. Like I said, pick out the easy songs, learn 4 chords, and you can play a whole song service. It may not be perfect, but you're moving in the right direction,
What's funny is the word of God is filled with people who couldn't do it on their own.
Yeah, exactly.
You look at Moses, you look at Gideon, you look at Peter, and that's just to name a few. These are people that God used who at first are like, I don't have what it takes. And yet they made themselves available, and God equipped them with what they needed to be able to get the job done. Exactly. Why wouldn't God do that for us, right?
Yeah. Step out of faith.
It's true, too. There's a need, jump in and fill it. It'll be greatly appreciated.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, very cool. Very cool. So, just want to wrap this up and bring this to a close. You've been playing for a while, and no doubt there's a lot of things that you like to gravitate to in regards to filling in your piano playing. Is there any type of advice you would give, just in general things, little tips or tricks that anyone can do to add to their piano playing?
I don't really have any tricks per se. I think, like I said earlier, the best things that I tend to always do are because I messed up on something and it sounded cool, But I know one thing I have done when I was learning initially was my piano instructor said, okay, here's C chord, and he'd say major, minor, minor 7th, 7th, major 7th. And I heard the sound, and then I had to go home and do that for each chord all the way up the scale. But what it does is even now when I'm playing, even if most of our music now it has a bunch of funky stuff going on to it. Now it's most part, from what I can tell, it's always pretty straightforward, pretty basic chords, nothing real fancy. But if if it says C chord and C 7th or C major 7th, there's times when you can throw that in, even though it's not written. And because it's in the right key, it actually adds a little bit to it, and different things. And So I would say just something simple like that. It's very basic. It's adding one extra note here or there. And I know I think in one of your videos you were covering suspensions and augmented chords and stuff. And they sound real scary, but they're not. It's really just changing up a key here or there. You know what I mean? Adding a note or whatever. But just something that simple, adding a seventh or and then even little walk downs. If you learn, okay, usually when I'm going from this chord to this chord, I can hit a note in between and it sounds cool. But those are just very basic things that I know in the beginning kind of help me add a little bit of different stuff to playing.
Yeah, those chord variations are cool. And it was something that when I had tapped into it, and it didn't come right away, it was, I was just excited that I picked up an instrument and I could, play a song. But when I started to discover that I could play variations of that same chord, and it still sounds like the chord, just enhanced a little bit.
Yes.
I was super excited. I was like, wow, no, instead I could play this. And
yeah,
it kind of lit a spark, it lit a fire in me. Like, it was encouraging. It was exciting. So,
well, yeah. And even now that you mentioned that, even playing just an inverted chord, your fingers are in a different position. So it lets you play some different keys that you normally wouldn't. I probably play 2 chords a song in the root position. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm usually all over the place, but I think having that freedom, and when your fingers are in an inverted position, they gravitate to different notes that you normally wouldn't hit if you're constantly playing in the root chord, and playing the root position. So even something simple like that, like once you're confident in playing C right here, C, E, G, switch it up, you know what I mean? And E, G, C or something. And your fingers, they just start hitting these notes, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's true. So one more thing that came to mind, all these questions just keep popping up in my head. But I know you never mess up, ever. Never.
All the time.
But for those who do mess up,
yes.
How do you get past that when you're playing live in song service?
Keep going.
There you go.
Yeah, you don't stop, and don't look at people like, oh, I'm sorry. You just keep playing like, what? I meant to do that. No, because when you do stop or you do make a big old deal about it, most people never even know. There's the few oddballs that would notice, like, oh, what was that note? And who cares, but most people don't even notice. But when you stop and make a face or, it actually draws attention to yourself. Yeah. And then it's like, well, what happened? Did I miss something? What's going on? I mess up all the time. And unless you're playing in the wrong key, which for some reason my keyboard, my kids like to hit the inverted button. And then I start the song. I'm like, oh, sorry, hold on. I mean, that's kind of huge. That's a bit of a problem that you just have to, wander through. But really just keep going. Just, fake it. Act like that was meant to be, and life goes on. And I do it at least every song service, hit something wrong, some wrong note, or oops, I'm too busy singing and I forget that I missed a chord somewhere. And so, you just keep playing. Don't stop.
Yeah, good. And actually, you mentioned something too. Another question at you. We are bringing this to a close, watchers, I promise. But I remember you mentioning at the beginning with your music testimony that you grew up singing first and then you learned piano. Mm-hmm. And I know just in watching you in the years past, you play piano and you sing. For anyone who's in that position where they either want to do that or there's just a need in their church, to fill in the voices, but are maybe afraid to do that because of the challenge of focusing on the piano and trying to sing at the same time. Do you have any guidance on that as well, singing and playing?
I think, again, I'll refer to my daughters. They want to sing and play the piano. So one thing I do is I pick a song for them that they already know how to sing it, number one. So they're already familiar with how it goes. And then they start playing it. And at first they're just picking out the chords, and then I tell them, okay, now try to sing it with it, and they'll sometimes they just totally back out just so they can play the notes. And then they start singing with it, and next thing you know, it's habit, and as for me, I honestly don't know how I could play the piano and not sing, whether it's on a mic or not, because you're praising God. And I mean, that's the whole point of it, but don't think, well, I can't do that and I can't sing and play. There are certain songs. There's a song in Albuquerque, and I still can't think of it, but it's there's a little part on there that the timing is really weird, and the notes are kind of complicated, and every time we'd come to that part, I'd have to back up and not sing and play it, and then jump back in, but otherwise, just start singing, even if it's a little bit, pick a song that that you already know the words, so you're confident and you're not having to think about, okay, now how does this go and what, and just start playing and just start singing, and practice doing that. And again, pray and ask God to help you, because again, when you're doing it for the right reason, God's going to help you, because it really does. For me, I mean, that's part of worshiping God, is playing and singing at the same time.
Nice. Well, very good. Well, huge thank you. That was awesome. Very insightful, very helpful. So I'm grateful. No doubt those who are watching this video are grateful for the information that you have too. Coming from another perspective, it's really encouraging. So again, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And keep up the fight in Waco.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me, and I hope it helps somebody, where there's a will, there's a way, seriously, with God, all things are possible. Don't think I just can't, you can just practice and pray, and you could do it. And thanks for having me. And if anything I said helped, then that's awesome, but that's good.
Well, good. For you viewers, thank you guys for watching this video. As promised a while back, I'm bringing this to a close. But if you have any questions, either for myself or for Joy, you're welcome to post those in the comments section below. You're also welcome to shoot me an email. I'm open to testimonies. I'm open to questions. I'm open to comments and or ideas. And that's at WorldCFMMusic@gmail.com. I'll also post the playlist for all of the piano lessons here at the end of this video, so you can click on that and you can see all of those videos in case you want to learn piano or maybe build a little bit on your piano playing. And you can also visit the website. It's WorldCFMMusic.com. And there's some resources there. There's some printable lessons. There's also links to the YouTube videos there on the site as well. And so, but with that, again, Joy, I thank you. And I thank all of you who are watching this video. And we'll see you guys on the next video.
Okay. Bye.